Sounds good.
So, welcome everybody to this evening's version of Spilling the Tea, where a career coach or a peer career coach chats with an Earlham alum about their life and adventure after Earlham. Thank you all for coming this evening and for those who tune in later on. I would like to start with a moment of silence. Okay. Well, we are here this evening with Iman Cooper, class of 2015. Whoop whoop. Um,
Yeah.
so happy to have you, Iman. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to be sharing my story with all of you guys. So thank you guys for showing up and bearing with us. We appreciate it.
We are as well. We're so happy to have you. We're so excited. Okay, so how this is going to go, we got a little late start. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I'm going to ask questions for maybe 15 minutes. We may not get to all the questions that I had to begin with, but then I want to make sure that after our 10 or 15 minutes of questions and dialogue with Iman and I, that the viewers have a chance to talk with Iman about their personal questions and really get a chance to mingle. So, yeah, I'll get into your introduction. Iman Cooper graduated from Earlham in 2015 with a degree in peace and global studies and a minor in biology. She is an award-winning serial entrepreneur and creative strategist. After winning President Clinton's $1 million Hult Prize challenge in 2016, she moved to Nairobi to launch BuuPass, an online marketplace for booking bus, train, and flight tickets in Kenya, which has reached over 400,000 users. Woo. She has been a keynote speaker in multiple countries on topics such as entrepreneurship, leadership, team culture, and dreaming big. Iman is passionate about bringing out the best in people by helping them identify and recognize their unique gifts, developing their visions for impact, and equipping leaders to lead strong teams through intentionally and personal to lead strong
Mouthful.
in personal development. She's also a Google Scholarship recipient and is also a Coca-Cola scholar. Your bio is so impressive, Iman. So impressive.
Thank you. Well, I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And so I'm looking forward to sharing a bit more about that tonight.
Yes, yes, we're happy. We're excited too. Okay, so the first question, BuuPass has grown to service over 400,000 customers in about 10 cities. It's one thing to come up with an idea. Many students have ideas of projects, but may not have the confidence to undertake them. How did you know that the idea of BuuPass was a viable project, especially for a competition like the Hult Prize?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I love that question because I think one of the biggest things that if you're a student, if you're interested in entrepreneurship and you're wanting to go after a problem, the biggest thing is that you start with your curiosity. You start with kind of asking a question and being like, okay, I don't believe that this problem has to stay the same way that it is. I don't believe that the status quo has to stay the status quo. It kind of starts with that seed of hope and knowing and believing that there could be a better way to do things. So one of the coolest things about my journey with BuuPass was that I got to see it literally go from an idea that we were writing on the boards in the library, where we were just literally writing out, okay, it could work like this, or this would be the next step, or this is what we would do, to seeing it be built and actually launched. And when I was in Nairobi, once it became more known, sometimes I would be at events and I'd be talking about, I co-founded BuuPass, and people would just be like, oh my gosh, BuuPass, I love BuuPass. Like, I use it all the time. Now I don't have to go to the office to book my tickets. I love that it saves me so much time and money. And so it was really, really cool to be able to see it go from an idea to a real thing. And I would say some of the most important things that you need to look for if you're wanting to solve a problem is you need to make sure that you are solving a real problem. Because sometimes in our minds we think, okay, this is a problem that someone has, and it's actually just a figment of our imagination because you haven't done your research, you haven't validated it, you haven't actually gotten out there and asked customers what their needs were. So if some of you may or may not know my BuuPass story, but when we were on campus, we were planning on creating a magic bus. That's why our name was Magic Bus when we started. So we were planning on having tablets with literacy apps on them. We were planning on having solar powered charging, Wi-Fi. We were going to make them a mobile cafe, the buses, a mobile cafe in the evening time. And then we were also going to have a rainwater collection site at the bus stop. So this was not actually the real problem. We were not doing any value by putting more buses onto the roads because, as I'm sure, Hepiza, I know that's not how you say your name, but as you were saying, in like Lagos, where there's so much traffic, in Nairobi, there was so much traffic. And so we realized the main problem was actually that there wasn't a good way to connect the people to the buses. There wasn't a system like there is here where you can look at the schedule and see when the bus is coming, know how much the ticket price is going to be able to pay conveniently online, or in our case with mobile money. So one of the things that we did was we asked a lot of questions. And once we got on the ground in Nairobi, we went to the 9 different areas of Nairobi, and we interviewed probably more than 1,000 people, from customers to drivers to the owners of the buses, to really understand what the problems were. And so you want to make sure that you're actually asking unbiased questions, because as long as you're willing to be wrong, you can actually discover that there might be a different problem than what you assumed was the first problem. So ask those questions, find the right product market fit, and make sure you're solving a real problem. I'd say that's definitely the first step.
So, as someone who's a strategist, what experiences should students kind of strategize to really take advantage of in their time at Earlham, if they're, wanting to follow similar path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that is so valuable about Earlham is because it's a small school and because it's a liberal arts education, you're going to get a more holistic view and approach to education. And I feel like one of the things I really appreciated about Earlham in my time there was that it was all about experiences. You can have as many experiences as you want to have. And I would say over the course of my life, one of the things that's been most valuable is I've just tried different things. So while I was at Earlham, I did a lot of different things. I volunteered at Amigos, the Spanish-speaking center in town. I did acting. I led Model UN as a co-secretary general. I worked in the PAG's office. So Earlham allows you to do so many different things. But one of the things that I would say that was really key in my Earlham experience was traveling abroad. So I went to Nicaragua because I wanted to learn how to speak Spanish. And I also wanted to be able to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I wanted to be in an environment where I wasn't going to be able to where I wasn't necessarily, not everything wasn't necessarily going to be comfortable and easy. So because Earlham allows you to transfer your financial aid, I 100% recommend every single student to take advantage of traveling abroad. Use, your Epic Advantage experience through that. I was like the inaugural class to get the Freeman Foundation scholarship that allowed me to go do an internship in Malaysia. I was working with a factory there, and that's where I started learning about team culture and employee engagement. And so I would just say, like, literally try as many things as possible. I would say, don't don't do things just for the sake of resume building. Do something because you actually want the experience and you see it as a learning and growing opportunity, and start something. Earlham is so supportive of you starting initiatives. I mean, like, while I was there towards the end of my Earlham experience, I started the Earlham Healing Collective because me and a friend realized that mental health was really a challenge on campus, and we wanted to do things to create a positive environment and remind students to take care of themselves. So utilize the fact that Earlham will support you in branching out, trying new things, starting initiatives. And once you start initiatives, you're really problem solving. And those are skills that you can take with you as you start your career. You can talk about those skills. And if you learn how to tell your story really well, then you can use that even as you're coming straight out of the gate as a new graduate.
Right. So one thing that is unfortunate is that things are kind of restricted because of COVID. But so for the people who are listening, if you can't take advantage of your Epic Advantage to go abroad, we do offer online partnerships with different internship providers where you can still do cultural exchange through your internship. And those are on the CGCE website. So on to the next question. As someone who works with organizations to bring out the best that a team has to offer, what should a student look for in an organization in terms of environment that will foster personal growth and not exploitation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I think as a student, you're kind of always, or at least at some point along your journey with Earlham, you're thinking about the future. You're thinking about, okay, what's the direction I want to do with my life? What sort of work do I want to do? How can I have impact? And so I think one of the most important things if you're looking for a positive team culture is to look for a company that shares your values. And that could be from the leader, like maybe you really respect and admire a certain leader, and from what you can see on what they post, maybe they really care about charity and giving back. So they have like a day of service, or I've seen some companies that have several hours of service that you can actually donate your time to be able to give to an organization of your choice. Or if you're really passionate about personal development and you want to make sure that you're able to grow in your career and learn new skill sets that will advance you, then maybe you're looking for a company that has a, a budget for personal development that will allow you to travel to conferences or take courses or get new certificates. And I think, you can never underestimate the power of insider information, because sometimes organizations, once you're on the inside, don't look like how you thought they would look on the outside. So ask people that work there, set up a one-on-one informal interview with them, and just get a sense of what their work looks like, what the company culture looks like. I've also seen a lot of like women groups, like there's a Black Women in Tech group where a lot of women use those resources to be able to actually navigate the work culture before they get there and say, hey, I'm applying for this job at this company. What is it like working there as a Black woman? Or what is it like working there as a person of color? So I think that there's different resources and avenues that you can go about to find a company that would be a really good fit for you. But those are some of the things that you should look into.
So many questions I have, but we don't have much time. So I'm trying to choose the perfect ones. So you served as a course facilitator, providing early stage entrepreneurs with necessary tools to create an impact for the Africa Yes Center. How do students figure out their story?
So I think first of all, your story is always going to be a work in process because you are growing, you're evolving as a person. But I think it's really important to look at the threads of your life. Like, what are the things that you're always drawn to? It could be certain causes. It could be, hey, you really love kids, or you really love the elderly, or you're always trying to help immigrants or first generation college students, or you love animals, whatever it is. You want to look at the things that you're drawn to. You also want to pay attention to the things that people always say, hey, wow, you're really great at that. Like, you're really great at asking the right questions that I've never thought about before, or you're really great at pulling out the best in somebody, or you're really great at looking at the gaps and seeing the structure and figuring out how you can get to point A to point B. Whatever it is that people are consistently commending you about is probably a really good clue. The other thing is, when you're in conversation with people and you're talking about something that matters to you, your story is usually in those little pieces that matter. So, whatever you usually find yourself talking about, your story is tied to that because your story essentially is your lived life experiences. It's the problems that you've solved, it's the people that you've impacted, it's the solutions that you've come up with. And so you can write down some of those things if that helps you to identify, like, hey, these are the things. And then you can group them into categories or common themes, and then just start to develop that. And then one of the things that I tell entrepreneurs all the time when I'm teaching them how to do their pitches and I'm coaching them around how to build and give successful pitches is that you need to practice it. So you'll probably have different stories that you'll use with different people depending on what the audience is and depending like what the time is. You'll have different stories for different times and places and moments, but you just practice it, practice your little elevator pitch, and then pay attention to the times that people are like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more about that, because that means you've hit it in a really good way that piques someone's interest in what you're wanting to talk about. And that applies to your personal story, that applies in business, that implies as you're creating presentations for work. You can use storytelling across the board. It's a really powerful skill to develop and to work on.
Great, great. So I don't want to take up all the time. Of course, now follows the student question answer session portion of the session. And then if no one ends up having answers, I definitely have more answers. I mean, if no one has more questions, I definitely have more. So yeah. So the floor is
Awesome.
open to anyone who has questions.
Perfect. And I think you can, if you want to unmute, you can, or if you want to type them in the chat, you can do that too. So whatever you want to do.
Hi, Iman.
Hi.
The data science major. So let me give a little context. I'm Zimbabwean, and I do data science and mathematics, maybe. And I'm interested in business entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. However, I'm faced with the situation where I don't have a financial muscle to give me enough flexibility to be practicing or like gaining experience from different parts. However, the American policies is I can't work for a paid position in a field that is outside Nigeria. However, data science is not really, it's into business, but not like learning about business startups and stuff like that. So I'm pretty torn between my financial situation and my passion for learning different things about business. What advice would you give to a student like me?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand your question correctly. So you're trying to figure out if you should take an offer that gives you that would give you like money, but it's not exactly what your passion is. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you're a sophomore. So is this for an internship position or is it
For
like
internships.
internships?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, while you're at college, it's like a really good time to just be able to explore so many different things. And even if you do an internship that doesn't necessarily align with what you want to do long term, there's things that you can learn from it. Like I had, when I did my World Kitchen internship, we were in a factory, and I realized that that's not this type of work environment where I thrive and where I come alive. So even though it was a difficult experience, I still learned a lot from it, and developed some tenacity and resilience. And even in another job, where I was doing ticket sales, and it was we were kind of in a little hot box up on top of the roof, and it was not a very good job. I didn't have a good boss, and I didn't like it, but I learned in that I can sell, and I can learn how to communicate clearly and relate to people quickly. And so I would say, like, if you have the opportunity to do something, try it out. Like, you're a sophomore, so you still have time to try different things. And I would say there's no harm in trying different things, because you will learn something from every experience that you get and that you have. And then, hopefully that also gives you more time to think about like what's the type of role that you would want once you graduate Earlham. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then to your I think this was kind of a question in there, but if you're wanting to pursue entrepreneurship, not everyone starts out with having money just given to them. So when we were students, we literally bootstrapped the $10,000 that we needed to do the pilot. And we used that $10,000 for about 3 months, including our plane tickets. So we were living on a very, very shoestring budget. We were living off of samosas and yes. So I would say that even if you don't have a lot of money, there are ways that you can figure it out. You can ask people to volunteer or to lend their time. We had people do our logos, and we asked for help. And so asking for help is something that can't be underestimated, because people are willing to help you if you're willing to ask. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does give some insight. Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
So what I heard from your answer, Iman, was it's up to students to really take advantage of any experience that they had or that they have the opportunity to have, in order to really figure out themselves, at least while they're in college. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, even don't underestimate the power of volunteering. You can learn so much by volunteering or by shadowing somebody. Like, for example, when I came to Earlham, I was pretty focused on being a pediatric neurosurgeon. And I had the opportunity to be able to shadow a neurologist in Indiana. I shadowed a neurosurgeon, I shadowed an ER doctor, and literally they were all from asking random people for help. Like, one of my neighbors had a friend who was an ER nurse, and she asked her, and she was like, yeah, sure, like, you can come shadow. And so, but take advantage of any opportunity, and don't underestimate, even if you're volunteering, you can still create an impact. You can still implement a program that will teach you so many skills that you'll then be able to use later or talk about as you're telling your career story. Does anyone else have questions?
Sure, I have one. Hi, Iman. My name is Aaron Crichton. You spoke a little bit about like with your experience with Hult about like you said, to make sure that you're finding a problem that is actually like an actual problem that need to be solved. Like how did you and your team like manage I guess how much research that you wanted to go into that, you know, it's not too little or it's not too much, it's like the good amount that you're just certain that this problem is something that actually needs to be solved?
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. That's a great question. I would say that, you know, we kind of did it in two parts. So we had before we had actually gone to Kenya, we won regionals in March, and then we went to the Hult Prize Accelerator for like a couple months, and we had half the team on the ground testing, and then the rest of us went for like almost 3 months before the finals. And so there was that first part. And then the second portion was once we actually won, we got on the ground, we did another round of research to actually see like what was working or not. And at that point, once we had won, for example, one of the things we realized was like the different sectors of Nairobi, the bus drivers essentially, they had different issues. Like in one neighborhood, the issue was that the people, they would always get robbed on their way home, or on another section, the issue was maybe that customers would get off the bus and not pay them. And so there was all these issues. And so it was at that point, once we started talking to all these different stakeholders, it was only at that point that we realized we actually needed to pivot from our original idea. So our original idea was how to digitize transport with the local minibus system. And after we did additional research, once we were fully on the ground and there, we realized we actually needed to switch to another market, the long distance bus market. So, and I think one of the things that I learned from that was we asked any and everyone. So we had like formal focus groups set up, and then we also went to the bus stations and talked to customers one-on-one and asked them like, what are your pain points? What are your issues? How long does it take you to come to the office to book your ticket in town? So that we actually had data points, and you want to look for data points that are qualitative and quantitative so that you can get a full picture of what's going on. And it depends on what the idea is, but for us, because it was transport and it was something that affected like almost everyone, we would talk to people, we would talk to Uber drivers, we would talk to people on the bus, we would talk to people when we were waiting in line. Like, so I think it was just kind of going about it until we felt confident that enough people were saying the same thing that we were saying, where it was like, this is actually a real problem. I would love to have a solution where I can just book from my phone. That's once we started hearing that more often in our conversations, we realized, oh, we're onto something. So I would say either in your research, you'll discover that there's a different problem than you originally thought, or you'll hear people start saying back to you kind of the solution that you were thinking in your mind, and that's how you validate it.
Can
Thank
you
you.
go to the data retrieval process? How did that?
Sorry?
Can you go into how you first decided how you were going to find the data and analyze it? So, of course, it sounds like you did a lot of interviews. Where did you start?
Well, while we were still in Indiana, one of the things we started with was we started reaching out to bus co-ops in Nairobi. We had found someone that had a blog and that was really active in that space. And then one of the key things that was really important for us was we created a partnership with Digital Matatus, which was a research project out of MIT that was working on mapping the routes for the minibus system in Nairobi. So because they already had the data and their background, I think, well, it wasn't data science, but they were much more well-versed in that than we were. So we leveraged their expertise and their advice. So we asked them, as we were crafting these focus groups, how do we create like surveys that are non-biased? So I think just asking for help and leveraging the different contexts. And as a student, you have access to so many resources, not only through Earlham, but through any other university. If you reach out to another professor, for those of you competing in the Hult Prize, if you reach out to them and you're like, hey, we're working on this problem, and I saw that you do research in it, or you have a case study, can you share with us your thoughts, or can you give us your feedback on our idea? I would just say, like, literally reach out to people. People are willing to help you. And so it was really important for us to be able to have some of those partnerships to help us with that skill set that we didn't necessarily have initially.
I keep muting myself. What was your favorite course while you were at Earlham?
What was my favorite course? I would say global dynamics was definitely one of my favorite classes in PAGS. So I'm a PAGS major with a bio minor. And the reason that course was really impactful for me was because it really taught you how to look at the power dynamics around the world and look at systems and structures of power and of inequality. And I think one of the biggest things I learned from majoring in PAGS is that when you're working in international environments with different people, it's really important the way that you approach the process. So like kind of like I shared with BuuPass, we didn't come in with a like attitude of this is the solution, let's do it. And we actually, in conversations with people, kind of got pushback or had people kind of warning us that like don't do this because, or they were like, we're glad that you guys are actually asking questions and researching, because there was a couple other initiatives that had failed before because they came in from the outside and just were like, oh well, I believe this is the solution, so here it is. And then the people that it affected that they didn't involve in the equation pushed back and were like, yeah, we don't want this system. So I think one of the most important things that I learned from PAGS was how do you kind of come alongside communities, ask the right questions, and kind of partner with them and work together with them to create solutions rather than just imposing your own thoughts, preconceived ideas, and notions on them. And I think that that is something that is valuable and allows you, will serve you in many different aspects, whether you're dealing with leading global teams or you're working with new hires, whatever the case may be. Is there anything else that people would like me to touch on that I didn't touch on or that I skimmed over? Do people have any more questions or thoughts, opinions, ideas?
I'm just wondering, because I'm considering being a PAGS major as well. I'd love to hear more about your experience in that. Yeah.
Awesome. Is it Nolia?
My full name's Magnolia, so just take the mag off and it's Nolia.
Nolia. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, honestly, I loved PAGS. I love that because personally, I have a lot of different interests. I have a lot of different passions. And because PAGS is interdisciplinary, you're able to touch on so many different things. So you are getting history, women's studies, economics, you're getting areas of like conflict resolution. And so I think because the overlap, it touches on so many different subject matters. I think that it's really great if you also have a lot of different passions and interests and you like to see how things overlap and intersect, post-colonial theory. And it just gives you a really good framework and strategy for how to, for how to think about systems and structures and how you would either disassemble them or create a better system and structure that works to benefit to benefit people in whatever area you're working in. So I think it's great. And Gypsy and Ryan are amazing, super supportive. And I really enjoyed my classes and being able to write my thesis. Like, yeah, just can't say enough good things about them. And if you haven't talked to them already, like you should just go talk to them and see like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm interested in. And, you know, like there's often space for things to be like, I used some of my experiences that I did in Nicaragua for an internship, for my internship credit for PAGS. And then, you know, was able, when I was working in the PAGS office, was able to help with the 40-year reunion and organizing, you know, alums coming from all over and creating some communication to help better connect alumni and students. So I think there's lots of different opportunities for you to plug in if that's something that you're interested in. Yeah, you're welcome.
So we have a few more minutes. Does anyone have any more questions? I do. Okay. How has COVID changed the way you conduct business or affected you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the COVID question. So COVID, you know, I think COVID has impacted everyone in a different way, and especially small business owners as a result have been, you know, either pivoting their products and offerings, doing something completely different, or transitioning into other roles. And so for me, it has made me actually want to transition and pivot into a different role, so that I can use some of these skills that I've learned building different programs and initiatives and leading teams over the past 10 years, to be able to use those skills of you know, relationship building and stakeholder management and strategy and storytelling and communication to be able to be an asset for other organizations. So I'm looking forward to kind of transitioning into another chapter.
Okay, so here's another one, and this may take a little while, but how do you find your unique gift?
I think that's a great question, because it's something that we are always asking ourselves, right? And I think that every single person has unique gifts and has something of value to contribute, multiple things. It's usually not just one thing. I think for me, some of the ways that I've been able to find my different gifts are just kind of some of the things that I mentioned of volunteering in different capacities, whether that's like, you know, kind of the first program I created was called Reading Room. When I was in high school, I kind of saw that there was this gap in this program that was focused on it was a tutoring program, but I realized like the kids didn't know how to read. So I restructured the program and brought on community partners and libraries and parents to engage different people. And then I realized, like, you know, when I went to Nicaragua, I was working on a program with a maternal waiting home, and I was teaching them about entrepreneurship and using some of the things I had learned as a young entrepreneur when I had my first business at 9 years old, and teaching them how to make jewelry and crochet and do things that could enable them to support themselves, how to set up a small business. And then, you know, starting BuuPass and other things in between there, I realized like I love creating and building things. I like creating structures around something so it can be replicated. I love bringing partners on board, and I love strategizing. So one of the things I started just paying attention to the threads of my life. What are the things that I usually am drawn to? What are the things that happen over and over? And so I would say if you want to figure out your unique gifts, it's important for you to try new things out. So serve, volunteer, try new things. You know, when I did wilderness, I'd never gone backpacking before. And so I wanted to do something that was going to push me out of my comfort zone, and that it totally did. But I would never have experienced that if I wasn't willing to just be like, or let me say it this way, if I had just thought, that's not for me, that's not my thing, I'm not doing it, I would have never had that experience. And I would say, you know, you can also ask people, like you can ask your friends, you can ask mentors or family members, like, hey, what am I really good at? What's something that I think, what's something that you notice that I do really well? Or what's something that you think I teach people really well or model to people really well? I was listening the other day to this summit by Brandon Bouchard, and Jenna Kuchar said, sometimes we're too close to our own genius. And I think that that is absolutely true. A lot of times the things that you're amazing at, your strengths, you don't even realize because you do them all the time and you're just like, well, this is just who I am. This is just me. But it's something that makes you uniquely you. It's something that makes you amazing. And it's something that you can actually contribute to the world. And then I would say the final thing that would be really helpful is to just continue growing your self-awareness. So you can do that through, there's so many tests out there that will help you understand who you are, who you're wired to be, and the unique value and gifts that you bring to the world. So Strengths Finders, I love the DISC assessment, the spiritual gifts test, love languages. All of these things are really helpful for you to understand who you are, how you communicate with people, how you show up in the world. And I've also found when I've done these professionally and privately, like with personally, personally, not privately, with friends, it's really useful to share with other people and say like, hey, this is my love language. What's yours? Like, I want to be able to show up and be a better friend for you. And so I think that's been really transformational in me being able to understand my own gifts. And I think that that could hopefully be helpful for you guys as well as you go on your own journey.
Thank you so much for that. Does anyone have any more questions? Okay, so I think we're going to wrap this up. This was a great addition to Spilling the Tea. Thank you so much, Iman, for coming and chatting with us and letting us pick your brain apart a little bit. This was awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Ebony. Thank you for facilitating the session and making sure that everyone got in. This was awesome.
Yes. So if you're interested in connecting with Iman, you can find her on LinkedIn and just shoot her a message. So this is not the last Spilling the Tea session that we will have. On November the 5th, we will have Dr. Chris Fukui, who is a sleep physician and assistant clinician. We will also have on the 12th of November, Sunu Shandy, who is a legal director. And then on the 19th of November, we will have Donnie Smith, who is a director of admissions. So if you know someone who's interested and or just needs to hear from someone in their industry that they are interested in pursuing, you know, tell them to check it out. Check out our social media pages for all the event details. That's the CGCE _ Earlham on Instagram. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Please take care of yourselves and let's make the rest of this week great. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.